Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So we started with gratitude, and so that's the theme. And something that I've been thinking about through these prayers this evening is the relationship between loving kindness and gratitude. How do they work together? Does one come before the other? Do they evolve simultaneously? Can I be grateful without loving myself? And these are just questions that are coming up. And so tomorrow, when we meet at noon again, maybe someone has some insight about their relationship between gratitude and loving kindness and how they relate to one another. Tonight, for the most part, it's about gratitude, but for me, I feel like they're almost one and the same, and so I look forward to the conversation ahead about how each one of us experiences the two. Gratitude. So Kobayashi Isa is a 19th century Japanese poet, and he was a lay Buddhist priest, and he is someone whose life was full of pain, and we know about him through his haikus. He wrote over 20,000 haikus, and through them we can experience him working through his pain and his suffering. And so just to start tonight, I'm going to start with my favorite one of his thus far. He says, "This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet. And so as I read Isa's haiku, it's a reminder to me that we are always all faced with challenges throughout our lives, and that there is always pain and suffering that accompanies us as we move through our precious time on earth. And at the same time, we're always being called upon to practice gratitude throughout all the stages of our lives, and especially when it is most difficult." This is how I hear that second "and yet." And so as we enter into Miketz, our Torah wisdom of this week, I'm thinking about this practice of gratitude and how we can learn from the Joseph story about it. We encounter a different Joseph than previously. No longer is he the young lad getting picked on by his brothers. He's now second in command of all of Egypt, just under Pharaoh. He earns this rank by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. 7 gaunt cows swallowing up 7 goodly cows, 7 shriveled ears of grain swallowing up 7 healthy ears. His interpretations get him out of prison and saves Egypt and the surrounding lands from famine. It's been over 20 years, since that boy Joseph blurted out his dreams to his family, and his brothers threw him into a pit in a fit of jealousy. When his brothers travel now down towards Egypt in search of food because of this famine, they don't even recognize their brother. Joseph wears Egyptian royal clothing. No more is he wearing the coat of many colors. He cuts his hair differently. He has an Egyptian wife. He has 2 children and a new name. Yes, like Abraham, like Sarah, like Jacob, Joseph gets a new name, except God doesn't give Joseph this new name. Pharaoh gives Joseph this new name, and this name is Tzafnat Pa'anecha, and it is not an easy name to pronounce. In Egyptian, it means God speaks, he lives, and our ancient commentators say it means he to whom hidden matters are revealed. And this is the name that Joseph receives after hearing Pharaoh's prayers, his dreams, interpreting them, and then making a plan of action. His journey begins not really knowing how to receive, to share, to interpret dreams, but his years in Egypt, in captivity, gave him time to develop this practice. And boy, did it come in handy for him now. His life has been tumultuous, to say the least. And yet Joseph continually practiced gratitude throughout it all, always saying that it is God directing him, speaking through him. Sfat Emet, the Hasidic Rebbe, teaches us about Pharaoh's dreams. He says that his dreams are a hint to us that the power of the other side, or evil forces, exists only because divine bounty is hidden in times of exile. This is the meaning of the swallowing up of the 7 shriveled cows, swallowing up the 7 goodly cows. In fact, that the goodly cows that they were shriveled up could not be detected. It appears as though these forces, these evil forces, had some power of their own, but that is not the case. This had to be shown to Pharaoh before the exile. Even though Israel was going to be subject to him, there is no power that stands opposed to God. This is why the Torah speaks of a Pharaoh who had not known Joseph, which that will come later in Exodus, meaning that Pharaoh had forgotten this lesson as well, that there is nothing that stands opposing to God. So what can we learn from this passage? To prepare ourselves well in days of plenty, in those times when holiness is apparent to us. We should fix the radiance firmly in our hearts so it may be there for bad times when holiness is hidden. One way of experiencing Torah, much like dream work, is to say that each of the characters that show up is but an aspect of ourself. Through this lens, Pharaoh may be seen as the ego-driven self, the one who is disconnected, and the one who lacks gratitude. And Joseph, our gratitude guide. Joseph has gone through a lot to embody a posture of gratitude, and he is still definitely fine-tuning. But he has made himself into a vessel, a conduit for spirit to flow. And this spirit, this Ruach Elohim, glides on the back of gratitude. His gratefulness through all of the stages along his journey transformed a land of famine into a land of great fullness of bounty. For us too, living through a pandemic, it's difficult to always be practicing gratitude. And I submit that this is the time to be practicing gratitude. This is what Pharaoh needs to learn. That there is no void devoid of divinity. When we forget this, there is no void devoid of divinity. Rabbi Arthur Green reminds us that divinity is everywhere. That there is no other source of being. When we forget this, we are living in exile. He goes on to teach us all that exists is of God, whether we're revealed or in hiding. But the power of hiding, the exile of the mind from any awareness of divine presence, can sometimes be very great. And the evil that human beings can perpetrate in the course of hiding from God's light can indeed be without end. The whole Torah is asking us to see light, and when we don't, to uncover it. This for me is what the practice of gratitude helps us with. To reveal that which is hidden, that name that Joseph gets, Safna Panecha. For Joseph to guide Pharaoh into a mindset of abundance, of great fullness. Brother David Steindl-Rast, born in 1926 in Vienna, is a Catholic Benedictine monk, notable for his active participation in interfaith dialogue and his work with interaction between spirituality and science. Teaches us that gratefulness is our full appreciation for something altogether unearned, utterly gratuitous. Life, existence, ultimate belonging. Literally, it is a great fullness. So no doubt right now the earth is suffering, and we are all moving through this great transition together. And there is light. There are those of us here who are still suffering and they are in pain, or they know someone who is. And being grateful is very difficult. Being grateful is difficult in the face of this life disruption that we've all been faced with. Most of the time, I'm grateful because of something joyous. And I can't really be grateful for my pain or for my suffering, but I can be grateful for the opportunity it gives me. Practicing gratitude in times of joy conditions me to practice gratitude in difficult times. And so we hear Isa again, this dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet. So I feel often I live in the space of and yet, given all the challenges and suffering and pain, can we still forever strive to practice gratitude in all of our moments? One practice that I like of gratitude strength training, I call it mirror mind. because a mirror loves every reflection equally. And I wonder what it could actually be like to live life with this, like a mirror, loving everything equally. It's a loving kindness meditation that can help us perhaps ignite our gratitude practice. And of course, it begins with loving ourselves, because we can't love ourselves, we can't extend that love out to anybody else. So with full and gentle breaths, filling our whole bellies with breath, we do this practice every day, just 2 breaths. Perhaps we extend that to 3 or 4. We can repeat these words to ourselves. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. And when we feel ready, we might choose to expand this practice and begin to include someone we care for deeply. And slowly we begin to draw more and more people into this practice. Saying those words, may I be filled with love and kindness, and dedicating it to somebody else. May I be well, and dedicating it to somebody else. May I be happy, and dedicating it to somebody else. First, perhaps someone close that we love, that we care for, and then ultimately extending it to those who challenge us the most. And I wonder if Joseph practiced this meditation, because we don't really hear him complain through all his trials, through all his ups and downs in his whole journey thus far. Yeah, Joseph comes along, Tzafnat Panecha, he gets his new name, the revealer of hidden things. He tells Pharaoh, your 2 dreams are one, not 2, 1. We too remind ourselves that though there might be a seeming duality to this world that we live in, there is a greater unity, a oneness that permeates all of existence. When we forget this oneness, we are living in exile. Joseph guides us back to this truth, and the pathway in is through gratitude and loving kindness. And this might take a long time. It took Joseph over 20 years. And so we start with just loving ourselves. And that might take a long time too, and that's okay. Practicing being a mirror with a great fullness of our lives, our families, our friends,